Today on the show, we have Kristin Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage Investments. This is Steve Rozenberg, and this is the Landlord Survival Show.
This is the Landlord Survival Show. When people stop being nice and shit gets real. You're the landlord. We're here to help. This is a show for what the gurus don't tell you about owning rentals. We're here for you because we're stronger together.
Brought to you by Empire Industries Property Management. Built for investors, by investors. For more information about this show, please visit our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com, home of the ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook.
Now, the Landlord Survival Show with your host, Steve Rozenberg.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Landlord Survival Show. Happy Tuesday to everybody. Hopefully everybody is getting thawed out here after the rainy weekend and everything going on. Just got back from Dallas myself, and my guest actually just got back from Dallas. We could have just done the show up there, I guess. But you know, it's interesting the things that go on that we see. Doesn't matter what city we're in, doesn't matter what we're doing and the people we meet. Everybody always seems to have the same challenges that go on in their investing career, in their investing life. And one of the things I have found from being an investor and, you know, having ups and a lot of downs, creating a company that manages quite a bit of single family properties, you start to meet a lot of people that you know, associate with that really talk the talk and walk the walk and do a lot of the things. And one of the reasons we even started this show, for those of you that don't know, this is episode, I think, number 7 in this series. And, you know, as investors, I think a lot of people, they talk to you about these shows and they talk to you about, you know, the glamour of buying a rental property, the fluff of it all. And no one really talks to you about the day after. It's like the hangover day, right? Nobody talks about what do you do once you own this thing? And how am I going to get this money? You know, all the excitement and hype and everything. And then the next morning, it's like there's a big, you know, air gets left out of the balloon and you're just sitting on the couch. And now you're like, okay, now is really where the work starts.
And the sexiness is gone.
And the sexiness is gone. There's no more. This is like, okay, this is real now. Now we're not dating anymore. Now we're married. And now we need to figure out how we're going to make this last for 30 years. And how are we going to be successful at this every day to make this a business and make it give you a return. And, you know, Pete and I started this business because there are so many people out there that they talk the front end, but they don't talk the back end. And, you know, I just think it's so important to have the back end. I think people need to realize that you're running a business when you have a rental property. I don't even care if it's one property. I don't care if it's a room you're renting. There's laws, there's regulations, there's stuff you got to know. And you may not need to use a management company, but you got to know the rules of the game you're in. Because if you don't know the rules, you're never going to win. Because it's like playing football with baseball rules. It's just not going to work. And so some of the stuff that I have learned is, you know, there's a lot of gotchas out there. And if you go to our website, it's selfmanagemyproperty.com, selfmanagemyproperty.com. We give away a ton of information. All we ask is that you share the information, you share the podcast. We are on iTunes now. Share it out to people so that other investors can learn from this. And, you know, you can go to we even have a Facebook group of people all over the country and people in other parts of the world that are investors. And we're all trying to figure things out. This is not a place to sell your stuff. This is not a place to be cool and put flashy pictures of shit that you don't really own. I want to talk to investors that actually are out there grinding, they're working, they're trying to figure things out, and they have legitimate questions. And those are the people I have on the show. Those are the people that are in the group. Those are the people I want to associate with. So I have my good friend here, Kristin. Kristin, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So Kristin and I met up in Dallas. Oh, gosh, it's been a while, right?
It's been a while, yeah.
It's been a while. And you know, we go to these investor events and we do a lot of things. And what you do is vital in this industry. You have a lot of connections. You work with a lot of investors. So tell everyone a little bit about who you are, what you do. Just give your resume, throw it out there on the table.
So I have been a full-time real estate investor for 14 years, just about 14 years. I got started in rentals, low-income rentals. When the market crashed, I had 61 doors, all rented Section 8, that I was self-managing. And I had no quality of life, hated it. Ended up getting into owner financing, started owner financing them as soon as they vacated, learned how to originate loans, started originating loans for other investors. I would find them buyers, I'd set it up, organize
the whole
paper.
deal.
Yeah. And then I started teaching realtors and other investors how to do it, and just,
Well, let's talk about this. So you had 61 crappy properties, right? Is that what we'll call
crappy.
them?
We'll
Okay.
call them. And actually, I mean, when I rehabbed, my Section 8 houses had granite countertops.
You had the nicest lipstick on the biggest pig, basically. is what you
Basically,
had.
yeah.
But look, I had those too. I own those properties, so
Sure.
I know what it's like, and that's sometimes that's the
But
barrier
you know
to
what?
entry.
Back in the early, mid,
Gosh,
2000s.
don't say that's the old
I know.
days now, right?
It is. We're talking pre-mortgage crash
Yeah.
crisis. And I was doing something called refi cash outs. And
Okay.
which are beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. So I was buying these things in the 30s, 30,000. And these were 2006, 2005 brick homes, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-car garage. Perfect, right?
Yeah.
Except they were in difficult areas.
Yeah.
And so I would have to come in and rewire and replumb because that stuff was all stripped out.
They like to take those as, I call them parting gifts.
I actually,
Yeah.
I've had that.
Oh.
I've had a tenant leave, and they were upset because they didn't pay their rent for a couple months, and so they got evicted.
That's fair.
And on their way out, they sold the HVAC equipment.
They sold. Well, good for them. Hey, you know what? That's entrepreneurial, right?
Seriously, yeah. People are like, oh, you've got great stories of stuff that happens.
I had a friend of mine. He had a tenant that skipped, and he went through the process. Of course, after giving them, chance after chance after chance, like we all do, right?
We all do.
And the tenant got pissed, so they put cement in all the toilets and plumbing.
I bought that.
Yeah,
I bought that
really?
house. Yes. That's a nightmare of a house.
Yeah, that is not a fun thing.
And it's especially bad if you don't know about it, because you really don't. Because a lot of those homes are winterized. There's no water on.
Yeah.
They're not going to turn any utilities on to buy it. And if you don't really look down in that toilet and
Who would
see that
think
it's
that?
no, I know.
Yeah, who would think that? I mean, that's just not something that would come up in my mind that, hey, maybe I should check and see if there's cement in the toilet lines.
Yeah.
But it was. And that's I'm sure a whole other story, but these are the things that happen to us, right?
Yeah.
I've got plenty of stories of just shit that has gone on properties that I've owned. I mean, I think I air conditioned half of Southeast Houston at one point because we kept buying them. We spent more time focusing on how we can secure these air conditioning units. It was like we're almost going to bring in engineers to figure out how to do this. And they still outsmarted us.
Mine looked like medieval torture chambers. I mean, I had like these Machiavellian cages around them, and I'm like, can I wire these? Can I booby trap these and set them up to electricity? Because there was at one point I was losing, I think I lost something like 6 or 7 ACs, outdoor AC condensers in a week, and one of them was occupied.
It blow. I mean, then we had to secure them from the inside.
Yeah.
Because they would pull them out from the inside when they left as a party
The copper
gift.
line, yeah.
And I remember one time we had plants stolen by the neighbor, and we go to the property and we're looking at this hole in the ground of these plants that used to be ours, and then we look at the next door neighbor and he's got these brand new plants, and he's just sitting on his porch like nothing's bothering him. And I said, I think those are our plants, and he says, no, they're not. Those are mine. I said, no, I'm pretty sure those were ours. And he's like, well, if you take them, I'm just going to take them back. We're like, okay, we'll keep them. We'll just throw gravel and make it a desert theme, I guess.
Seriously, I've actually had that happen, and I was absolutely stunned. I'm like, who goes and digs up freshly planted plants?
At
And
least fill dirt back in for us. At least
I had like knockout roses, like these little knockout rose bushes that I put in. I'm like, oh, it's going to be so pretty. Come back the next day, they're gone.
Yeah, exactly. I remember this one property I went to. It was like a little old lady that was there, and we ended up evicting her. And she broke the toilet in half, like literally broke it in half. Like I'm thinking, how do you even do that? I don't even know how you'd break a toilet like that, except with a sledgehammer. This is a 90-year-old lady. I'm thinking, how do you have time to do all that? Just pay your rent. It's not like I'm not asking you to do something we didn't agree upon.
My worst one was a Section 8 tenant, and I have to assume she went off her meds because she was a tenant for like 3 years. Stopped paying her portion. Then she wanted me to sign a piece of paper saying that she had paid her portion. I go, well, you haven't paid your portion. So
that.
I'm not going to be signing that.
Yeah.
And so anyways, she freaks out, loses it, ends up being evicted. She leaves. on her way out, drove her moving truck through the front of my brick house.
No way.
Yes. And I went to, so then I'm like, okay, enough's enough, right? So I went.
Enough is that was the limit. That was the straw.
I'm like, I'm sorry, but you just drove a truck through the front of my brick house.
That's not okay.
It's not. I'm like, and I was upset. I'm upset. And I'm upset. And I'm like, okay, she's going to jail.
This is happening.
This happened. So I went and talked to the district attorney, Dallas, and he goes, yeah, well, technically, she was living there. And I go, no, technically she wasn't. She was moving out.
And that makes it okay?
Apparently.
Really?
Yeah, they declined.
I may have a better one for you.
Really?
So I had this one property and it was on a corner, and the older gentleman was in there. It was in Southeast Houston, and I'll never get it. It was on Betty Boop Street.
That's a great name.
Yeah, it was a good name. And so we buy this house. It's a corner house. And I remember one day driving by, and it was one of those deals where, he didn't call me, I didn't call him. It was just like, you're good, I'm good, okay. And I remember one day driving by, and there's like, the guy put burglar bars on the property, and I'm thinking, well, that's cool, good for him.
Yeah.
He's taking care of the property. Hurricane comes, don't hear from him. Check on him, I go to the door, go to the property, he's like, he shows up, he's not at the property, he comes walking down the street, he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? I'm like, oh, I'm good. I said, you okay? You need anything? No. And I see a tree on the roof. I'm like, dude, let me get this tree. Let me take care of this. Said, no, don't worry about it. I got guys. I'll take care of it. I'm like,
this is your renter?
This is my renter.
Okay. Red flags should have been going off.
Well, yes.
Sirens should have been ringing
but they
there.
weren't. I'm just thinking, I've got bigger problems. The guy's a go-getter, right?
Yeah, He seems great.
He seems great. He's like,
willing
maybe I
to
should give him a
spend
job.
his own money on my property.
I'm going to hire
Awesome.
this guy,
Yeah.
and so I just don't hear from this guy at all. Pays his rent on time, never complains about anything. And the house was a piece of crap. So I'm thinking to myself, this is weird. He's not calling about anything. Maybe he's a handyman and he's got guys.
Was he totally Heisenberg?
Well, funny you say. So I get a call one day at about 7 in the morning, which is when they seem to call you. And it was a detective. And he says, are you the owner of such and such house? And I said, yes. He says, well, I'm Detective so-and-so. And I said, nice to meet you. And he says, when we raided your house at 3 a.m., we found some interesting stuff. And I'm like, did you just say you raided my house? And he's like, yes, I did. I'm like, okay. And he says, we found a semi that was hijacked, and it was full of vodka
In the
backyard. And he said, then we found weapons, children, drugs, all of this going on. He said nobody was living in that house. That was a fence house that they were storing everything in because it had a big yard. It had semi-truck access.
They stored children?
Well, I guess they're good workers. I'm not sure why. But so there was kids there. There was weapons there. And basically, he's going on and on. He's like, do you know anything about the guy? And I'm like, well, this is all I know about the guy. He's like, yeah, that guy's rented about 10 houses in that neighborhood. I'm like, really? I'm like, so he wasn't just this good tenant that I thought I had. He's like, no. So what's interesting though, so we go to the property, right? And all the stuff's gone from the property. And we open up this detached garage. And we open up the garage, and this is after Hurricane Ike rolled through. So there was a lot of supplies and stuff. And there's all this roofing supplies and stuff in the garage stacked to the roof of in this garage. And I'm like, me and my business partner, Pete, and my maintenance guy are all standing there like not saying a word like, what do we do with this? Guy comes walking down the street again. He's like, hey, how's it going? We're like, going pretty good. How's it going for you? He's like, pretty good. He's like, I'm going to be moving on now. We're like, and what are you going to do, right? He's a neighborhood guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to hold, I'm not a police officer. I'm not going to hold him. So he says, hey, I'm going to get my stuff if you don't mind, and I'll be out of your guys' way. And we're like,
okay.
We're just all standing there watching him. And sure enough, this truck pulls up. 4 big guys get out. They start loading the stuff in the truck. 5 minutes later, they're off. They're down the road, and we were still just standing there watching this go on.
That is crazy.
That's my story. That's my.
That's
claim
your
to fame.
crazy. That's your crazy.
Yeah, that's my crazy.
I actually have a better one.
Really? Let's hear it.
I've got the fake blind man story, which this goes in when you're renting, and if you're self-landlording.
Yeah.
If you have a red flag that goes off about somebody, and then you go,
how do you fake blind?
Okay, so he somehow pretended to be blind and got on government disability.
Oh, like he legitimately, not just for you. Like this is,
Oh, yeah.
He's swinging for the fences. I like it.
So I meet him at the property. He drives himself up, gets out of the car, right? And I'm like, okay. And he goes, yeah, no, I have a government check. I'm on disability because I'm legally blind. And I'm thinking, I just watched you drive a car here.
I don't think you know the definition of legally blind.
Right. And he's hanging out. And so he's obviously fake blind. And right there, I should have said,
Red
maybe
flag.
not.
Yes.
Maybe this guy is obviously a con man. This is not who you want to rent to. But I'm like, well, all right. So it's legitimate. He's got a check. I'm like,
I see no red flags.
He needs a place to live. This is okay.
Who am I to judge?
Who am I to
judge him? Let's do this.
Judge these people.
Yes.
So anyways, he ends up losing his check because he got too many speeding tickets.
Really?
Yeah, he got 3 speeding tickets, and so the government wised up and said, maybe this guy is not blind.
After 1 or 2, it still wasn't enough.
No,
3 does it.
So
Interesting.
he loses his check, and lo and behold, he can't pay rent anymore, and that's fine. So I'm making arrangements with him because he is fake blind.
Sure.
So, and his
They have
girlfriend
rights.
and his girlfriend had this really good job. She was mortgage something or
Eye
Bank
doctor?
of
Wasn't an eye doctor.
No,
Okay.
wasn't. So I'm communicating with her. She's striking deals. I have forgiven some past rent, and they just can't do it. They can't get together.
It's just not happening.
Right. So I finally am like, okay, I'm done. Go in front of a judge. They come in. He's got the dark glasses, the cane.
Sweet.
She's leading him up, and I'm just fuming, right?
Like a Bill Cosby moment, huh?
And I'm standing, complete. I'm standing there in front of a judge, and I am just, my blood is boiling. I'm so upset, and I'm like, okay, just keep it together. Don't just talk when spoken to. This is, but I'm the big bad landlord who's evicting the disabled blind
Listen
guy.
here, Blondie.
I know. I look like a complete jerk up there, and I'm like, oh. And so I finally say, well, I really haven't been talking to him. I've been emailing back and forth with her. And I had printed off like 20 pages of emails. And the judge goes, oh, let me see those. And so I hand it over to the judge, and she starts looking at it. And he, kid you not, you cannot make this up. He lifts up his glasses, looks at the judge, and goes, can I see those? She hands it to him.
It's like a Brady Bunch moment.
It was great. And I, like my eyes got wide. I'm like,
did
what?
he just say that?
Did he just say that? He starts reading these things in front of her, and she looks at me, and I'm like, I'm kind of giving her
stay
my
quiet. Stay quiet.
I'm like, okay, don't say anything. Don't say anything. I'm gonna win. And she's just like, oh, for the plaintiff.
Wow,
It was great.
So here's something interesting, and then we'll get off to our normal subject. But
Yeah.
I love these stories, and every investor should really pay attention to these stories because there's lessons in these stories, right?
My lesson is seriously rent to good people.
Yeah.
And if you've got somebody who is obviously defrauding the government,
What makes you think they're not going to defraud you?
absolutely.
Yeah, it's so true because so many of us we have these red flags, and look, I was guilty of them also. And we have these flags, and we choose to ignore them for our own laziness or greed.
Right.
That's what it comes down to.
That's what
it's
it was.
laziness or greed. We
It's
go, you know
both.
what?
Yeah, for me it was both. I'm like, cool.
Yeah, he's here. He seems like a good guy. Well, who am I to judge him? He's got his own gig going, but I'm going to get my rent, so I'm good. But when it's on you, then it's like that MFer, But I was in court one time, and we were one of our many, many evictions that we used to do before we put policies and procedures in place. And so I'm sitting in court, and the judge is listening to this guy talk about evicting a tenant. And the judge says, well, tell me what's going on. And the guy says, well, I'm just sick and tired of this tenant. He gets current, and then he gets late, and he always has a reason. And I'm just sick and tired of always hearing his problems. His family member has died 5 times in a row, the same
I
member.
love that.
Yeah, we actually, quick sidebar, we used to have a tenant that he used to actually take selfies and send us pictures of the funeral to prove that he was at a funeral, and that's why he couldn't pay rent. And we're like, this dude's taking a selfie next to a casket. I mean,
Yeah.
is he just visiting these, or what is,
After I had one that all of his relatives died, this guy had a friend call me up and go, well, we're in the emergency room.
He may die.
He has severed his arm with a chainsaw. And I'm like, how the hell do you hide that from me the next time I see him?
And why do you have a chainsaw?
This is a good question. I'm like, why is he running a chainsaw?
So I'm in court, and the judge is listening back and forth, and the judge says, okay, so has the tenant ever been late on rent? And he says, yeah, he's late a lot, and then he makes it up, and he's current, and then, then a couple months later, he slides again, and he goes, I'm just sick and tired of it. He goes, okay, so let me see the lease agreement. So he looks at the lease, and he goes, okay, so when the tenant was late before, did you charge them late fees? And the guy goes, no, because, rent was due on Wednesday and he said he'd have it on Friday and I just want the money. I'm trying to be a nice guy, blah, blah. And he goes, so let me get this straight. You want to dictate when you want to enforce a contract. And you think it's okay for you to let things slide when it's okay for you. But when it's not okay for you, that's when you want to enforce the contract. He says, let me explain something to you about contracts. It's a bilateral agreement. They have to perform. If they don't perform, you have to perform. You don't have the option to make a decision as to whether or not you want. Otherwise, you, sir, voided the contract, not them, because you did not perform, meaning charging them late fees every single time. And it could go into a discrimination because if you charged other tenants late fees and not him, now you're discriminating.
Right.
Which is fair housing.
Right.
And I'm sitting there watching this go down and I'm like, oh boy. So
because we've all waived late fees in the past, and we put them on there and we'll waive them. I mean, because sometimes they get out of control.
Well, and sometimes, people, I talk to investors and they put these huge late fees on there. They want to scare the tenant. $250 in your first kid, and then I want, a tow after that. And, and what happens is you make it so that the tenant can't pay.
Correct.
And then you're like, okay, what do I do? And as soon as you waiver, now you have set a precedent from what the judge said, which he ended up dismissing the case and said, you got to start over again. Good luck. Hope you don't come back to this court, basically. And he said, you have set a precedent with this contract that you can't enforce the late fees and you can't enforce when rent's due because you are not sticking to the contract yourself. And so the lesson I learned there was very quickly,
enforce your contract.
This was early in our days when Pete and I were running around not knowing what we were doing, but we learned like, okay, you know what? This is a pretty serious thing when you're collecting rent and you're doing late fees. Same thing with trip charges. So many people charge these trip charges and they want to charge like, $300, $250, but then they don't charge the trip charge. And I tell them, be careful what you put in the contract because that is a binding agreement that you have to enforce. You don't have the right to not enforce it. It's not at your discretion like people think.
Right.
And they go, well, it's my house. It's like, it's not your house. It's your structure, the business running inside of it. You have to abide by the laws of the business, not the rental property. You're talking 4 walls and a roof. That is not a business.
What do you all charge for late fees?
I couldn't even tell you. I have no idea. That's what's nice when you own a company. You have people to do it, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a percentage of the rent, maybe 10% of the rent or something. What we've learned is, and this is what we tell owners, look, you don't want to make it so that there's a penalty, but you don't want to make it so it's insurmountable that they cannot not stay there because of the late fees.
Right.
Because you're the whole thing is creating a constant flow of revenue. And if you disturb that and you make it so that they can't do it, are you really doing any good? You may be able to prove and say, well, I got $200 out of the guy, but same thing, when you're doing these trip charges, it's like, well, a $50 maintenance issue of a dripping sink could turn into thousands of dollars in mold because you wanted to prove a point that you have a trip charge.
Right.
So are you really helping your investment? The tenant leaves, you still have the problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
The tenant's like, later, I'm out of here. You got mold and I'm suing you.
Right.
And you're like, okay, I didn't know about this and I didn't know about that. So,
and I still have that problem right now. I've got 2 borrowers on loans that
really
they pay quarterly.
All right, so let's get into what you do. That's what I want to talk about.
Yes. Right.
So we kind of went on a little tangent there, but it's good. I think it's good. But all right, now tell everybody what you do.
I buy owner finance mortgage notes.
Okay, so.
And I buy and sell them, obviously.
Right.
I mean, I can't keep everything that I buy.
So kind of break that down more for people that don't understand, because there's a lot of people here that this is newer to.
Yeah, like owner financing. So owner financing is similar to rent as you get cash flow, but you are no longer an owner of that property. So you transfer warranty deed to somebody else.
Okay.
So you're not responsible for any repairs.
Okay.
Or taxes or insurance on it.
Okay, so where do you find the people
to buy these houses?
Let's start from the beginning of this thing. So you get an owner that
So
wants...
I've got a house, right? And sometimes, I've got a house and I decide that I'm going to sell this thing on installments. So somebody will pay me a lump sum down payment, and then they will pay me each month.
Okay.
A mortgage payment.
All right. So they're going to pay you every month, and that mortgage payment is going towards the mortgage, just like you're being the bank.
Exactly.
You're being the bank for someone. So if an investor wants to get into this business and understand it from the most part, you're finding a deal, you're finding a property. You're either buying it or you're keeping. I don't know if you're going down that subject to road. We won't tackle that.
That's a huge thing.
That's another conversation.
Again,
yeah.
It's another kind of tool in your investing belt.
Well, that's just it. Yeah.
There are some houses that you're going to pick up as a rental. Why? Because of appreciation. Because you don't get that either.
Yeah.
So
you get one or the other.
You get one or the other. So you either don't have to be responsible for repairs or you do. And so do I have rentals? Yeah, I have a couple rentals. I also have owner finance mortgage notes. Those are basically hassle-free cash flow.
Yeah.
But in 30 years, when they're paid off, they're paid off.
Right.
And they're gone.
So it's a diminishing return at some point. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no, and it depends on how you look at it. So you are taxed. So there's two parts to a mortgage payment. There's principal and interest. Principal reduces the balance that they owe you.
Right.
That you're not taxed on. You're taxed on the interest you collect. So at the tail end of a mortgage like this, your tax liability is very, very low.
Right, because it's inversely.
Because it's inverse, but you still have the same monthly cash flow on that. And so every one of those that I acquire, I look at it as a salary increase.
Yeah, because I say that it's diminishing. What I mean by that is eventually it's going to be paid off. It's not an asset that's going to keep giving you. But that's like saying I'm pulling water from the ocean and one day we're going to be out of water. That's not realistic.
I mean,
there's deals all the time to keep going.
I'm in my 40s, so in 30 years, I'll be 70 something.
You're probably not going to be doing. Well, you may be. I don't know.
Well, I might be. I might be hustling.
You may be
in
out
my
there
70s,
hustling.
but the likelihood is I'm not. And so most of my investments by then will just be, I'll be living off of them.
So let me ask you this: and are you? We have our event. Are you going to be in town tomorrow for our owner education series? Or
I'm not. I leave for Vegas.
Vegas.
Yeah, I'm going out to Vegas.
Nice, good for you.
Yeah.
So, we do our owner education series, and tomorrow we're doing one here in Houston. It's at the Marriott for anyone that wants to go. It's downtown Houston, 26, 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock, basically. And it's going to be us, Daryl Dyke with Noble Mortgage. You know Daryl.
Love Daryl.
And yeah, Daryl's a great guy. And then we've got Matt Trenchard from Senate House Buyers. I'm not sure if you know them.
I know the Senate House Buyers.
Yeah,
but
good guys. And so what we do is we do these events, and this one is called Understand It, Find It, Fund It. And so basically, we talk about Senna goes on, and they talk about how to actually find deals and what is a deal and how to identify a deal. Daryl goes on and talks about how you actually fund these kind of deals because they're hard to get funding on. And then I come on and talk about the mindset of how you become a successful investor, because one of the things that you kind of touched on, the reason I bring this up, is a lot of people, they don't understand definitions. And what I mean by that is they don't understand that these are all strategies to get you something. And a lot of people say, when I talk to them, I go, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this because I want to buy and hold, or I'm doing this because I want to flip. I'm like, that's a strategy. That's not the goal. Like, there's got to be a goal as to why you're doing it. And a lot of people don't really think that far ahead. They just think I'm flipping to flip, but it's like, no, you have to flip for a goal. You have to wholesale for a goal, So
wholesaling and flipping, that's a 9-to-5 job.
It's a job.
It's a job.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
And that's not, are you an investor? You probably feel like you are.
But you're not.
But you're not.
Sense, yeah. I mean, it's you're, and I don't even think it's, and I've got nothing against, people that do that.
No. And it's great. It's important.
It's a sales job. You're selling on the front end to get the deal.
And you are constantly out there looking for your next deal.
You have to.
You've got, and right now in this market, people are like, we can't find anything. Well, that's why you prepare and you have cash flow. The reason why I made it through 2008, cash flow.
Yeah. No, it's so true.
I was not a flipper.
Well, what's funny is the way that we got rid of all of our crappy houses is that we sold them to other investors as owner finance.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of investors. We had a lot of Canadian investors that we did business with. They can't get loans, but they wanted investment properties. So I'm thinking, okay, well, these guys, solid credit. We still manage the properties, actually.
Yeah.
And so it worked out well that we said, you know what, okay. And we were very upfront saying, listen, these are challenge properties, but you're getting it at a good deal. We put the tenant in.
And we're financing you.
We're financing you. You don't need to put it on your credit. But, the whole thing, would do a balloon and all that. And it worked great for everyone because they got a deal. They got immediate cash flow. It was basically turnkey from day one. The tenant was already in it. Now, there's trials and tribulations, as we all know, that go into that.
Sure.
And they may be more amplified at the lower price rental range, as we know. But at the end of the day, they're getting into the game. And that's the biggest thing I think people need to learn is everybody wants to know how you get on the Ferris wheel, right? How do you get on this ride?
How do you get started?
How do you get started on this ride?
Right.
And I tell people, you get started by one foot in front of the other. You just got to take action. You got to go to these events, meet people. There's so many people out there. And so let me ask you this. How did you get started? If someone said, hey, Kristin, how did you get into this? And how would I do this for you 10 years ago? What would you give? What kind of advice?
So I didn't even know that there were real estate investment teachers out there, mentors, classes, courses. Had no idea. I read about 5 books.
Really?
Started with Ken McElroy's The ABCs of Real Estate Investing.
Yeah, that was a rich dad.
I don't know that. Was he a rich dad?
He was part of the cycle, yeah.
Was he part of that?
Part of that crew.
Oh, part of that speaking crew?
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, and then I read the Rich Dad books and, all of that. The Landlord Bible.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's still on my shelf.
Really?
Yeah, it's great. But it's still, all of the practices are good from that. But yeah, no, that's how I started. And really, it was learning how to finance. That was the number one thing.
Now, did you come from a finance background? Like,
No.
How did you?
Came from a teacher.
Really?
Yeah, I was a French teacher.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So, what drew? Let's start this. What drew you to real estate?
I decided that I was going to stop teaching and stay home with my first baby.
Okay.
And my husband rightly looked at me and said, "You're not the kind of woman who wants to stay home. You sure you want to do this?" He goes, "I'd love it if you did, but you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Yes, I just can't take this baby to daycare, blah, blah, blah." I lasted 3 months and I was almost losing my mind.
Really?
Yeah. And so he was the one who started tossing books at me and I read it. And, after about my 5th one, I don't know, duplexes, triplexes, and quads, I think it was called. And I'm like, I can do this. Let me go buy something. And it just happened that our next door neighbor was a realtor who specialized with real estate investors.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so he found it. We just went and got, a loan at a small bank. And
This is in Dallas?
this is in Dallas.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So, for people that are wanting to get into this, you
We had some money to start investing with. The hardest question is when you literally have nothing. You're living paycheck to paycheck. How do you get started with that?
Right.
And I think everybody knows the answer is wholesaling. It's
Create some
devilishly
cash flow, yeah.
create some cash flow or go out and find a partner.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who have money but don't have the time to invest, and
Yeah.
if you're willing to do all the work doing it, you almost have to. You have to have some type of money to get started.
So, let me ask you this. When you were doing your first deal, how nervous were you about screwing up, making a mistake? That first
I think I was just so young and dumb.
and didn't know, and you just kind of pulled the trigger on it?
I look back at that. So my first purchase was an 8-unit apartment building.
Wow, that's pretty ambitious. Good for you.
Had no idea that was ambitious.
Yeah.
And to make it worse, it was 2 blocks away from the intersection of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X in Dallas.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Got it for a great deal.
great deal. So, okay, so you get this property. How did you start unpacking this thing? You get this deal.
So mistake number 1, probably buying down there. Mistake number 2, I didn't go in every single unit.
Okay, so
I went into the ones that they showed me.
right, which are always the best ones. You say, "Let me show me your worst ones," and they show you their
And one
best
of them
ones.
was vacant, but it was rent ready. I'm like, oh, this is great.
This isn't bad.
This isn't bad
I
at
can do
all.
this.
I'm like, oh, we just moved somebody into this. The rest of the units, oh my God, should have been condemned.
Really?
So right there, I should have been in all the units.
Okay.
And I probably could have gotten it for less
Okay.
had I done that.
So you're looking at these properties, you're doing the math, the numbers are making sense, I'm guessing.
Numbers, and you know what? I made money off of it. I earned every penny because, when you're doing something like that, that's, you can't take one of your units and put a manager there.
No, it's not. There's not enough. Yeah.
And not having an on-site management there is...
And 8 units doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So
Yeah.
those are really hard buildings.
You bought a job is what you did.
I did.
You bought a job.
I did.
But you got a lot of lessons out of that job.
Absolutely.
So tell me about a time when you bought this property where you just kind of got kicked in the face, where you just kind of just walked into something and you're just like, holy crap.
It was a daily occurrence.
Daily.
It was daily. We had problems with Tent City, homeless people next door.
Tent City?
I call it Tent City because it was just tents in the
And that was
vacant
next
lots.
door to the property?
Yeah.
You didn't see those when you...
No, they kind of sprung up maybe, I don't know, 6 months or a year after I bought it. There was one time knocked on the door to go talk to this tenant, and
Of the tent or the
no, of the apartment.
okay.
So this one apartment, and I was knocking on the door to talk to her, and nobody answered, and the door was unlocked, and I'm like, hello. The only person in that thing was a 14, 15-month-old little girl.
Whoa.
And I was like, I'm looking around, and I'm like, you got to be shitting me.
What'd you do?
I closed the door, and I called 911.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't want anybody to know that I had called 911, so I quickly got
Did you
out
hide
of
in
there.
the tent?
I didn't, no. Yeah, no, it's eye-opening. So
Yeah.
that was the last time I bought down there. I started picking up small little homes over in Pleasant Grove area of Dallas.
Yep.
Which it's nicer. It's still, Southeast Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell us, now that you're going through this and you've done this a long time, what are some non-negotiables when you're looking at deals or you're looking at something you're going to own or finance? What are some things that you go, that's a hard no. Like I won't.
What are hard things to own or finance?
No, a hard no for you.
Oh, a
meaning
hard no
something
for
that you
me
won't
personally?
Even,
Oh,
well,
God.
let's say you're looking at a deal, and the reason I say this is Pete and I have hard no's, right? We don't want to buy anything in low income areas because we've owned them, right?
So
That's a hard no.
I'm no longer doing that.
Okay.
So I do have, I've got 4 things under construction right now, rehab projects.
Okay.
I'm turning them into Airbnbs,
Really?
and they're super high end.
Nice.
So it's just a little bit more me now.
Gotcha. So you don't do any low end stuff.
I'm not doing any low end stuff now.
Would you tell people not to get into low end?
Absolutely not. But if you're gonna rent low end, rent Section 8.
Right.
Or there's a great charity for everybody listening in Dallas. It's called The Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I went to their fundraiser last week, and they're getting homeless people
Housing.
but they're paying
Oh.
up front for they're paying their security deposits and then paying up front for 3 months or something like that.
And what I tell people is, when we own these properties, and I think Pete and I had 30 something of these things. What I tell people is it's not that they were bad deals. They were just bad deals for us.
Right.
Because we didn't have the right business model wrapped around them. We, when we finally sold some and we owner financed a ton of them, and some we just went to and sold them, and we sold them at a loss. We came to, how you get a loss when you buy a $40,000 house, I don't know, but we did. Where we actually came to closing with money, and we're like,
how is this possible?
Stupid are we? How does this even happen? But the problem we had is we just could not find a workable solution to successfully run these properties. And
right. No, and for me, I had lost my appetite for landlording, for managing these things.
Right.
It's
a battle.
It's a battle. So, if I would ever acquire something else like that again, I'd have a property management company take care of it. I mean, just because it's
not worth your time.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah. And what I tell people is, when we went to closing for this one property, I remember, and we brought money, we were the happiest ones at the table. The guy was happy because he was getting a good deal. We were happy because it was no longer our problem. And
right.
What I tell people is, until you've walked that walk and you have all these mortgages and you don't know how you're going to pay them, and the mental stress that goes along with owning properties that don't fit your business model, getting that alleviation just off your plate, it's not a monetary thing. And
it's a stress thing.
It's a stress thing.
Yeah.
It's a matter of sitting there going, you know what? I can free up my mind to be more productive and work and focus on good things in my life, and I can focus on things to be successful at, and not focus on this drain of every time this tenant calls, you're going, oh my God,
the phone would ring and I would just cringe.
Yeah, I used to be afraid to look at my phone, and I used to remember, every morning you look at your phone and you're like, oh my God, 9 messages, and I remember I did a Facebook post one time talking about how I used to hate the 4th of the month, because the 4th of the month to me that's when we found out who paid and who didn't pay.
Right.
And who we had to start, sending notices out to. And, I remember one time we had 30 something properties and we sent out 28 notices to pay. It's holy shit, man.
Well, and that's why, especially for new landlords, new to the business, because you don't have the cash flow to cover that. I mean,
No.
And you have a perfect storm, 28 out of 30 are not paying. When you've got mortgages on this stuff,
it gets scary.
It's scary.
Yeah.
But, that was the one reason why I survived, because all of mine were rented Section 8.
Yeah. So you were getting your cash flow in.
I mean, government was guaranteeing them. So even if they, lost their hourly, wage job, the government would step in and pay their portion.
Yeah. Now in Houston, it's gotten a little bit, I don't want to say tougher. I would say there's a little bit more red tape that goes in kind of to get it done. And I don't know how this is in Dallas, but
There's always red tape.
It just makes it so it's not, we'll say, user friendly.
Yeah.
So they make it tougher, which, to us, when you have a property, I hate to say, we try not to even manage things below $1,000 a month.
No, absolutely not.
And that's the cutoff for us. And a lot of that could be the school district and other things, but we just know that
it's hard to find somebody to manage for less than
it's hard
$1,000 a month. It really is.
Yeah, from a management company perspective, it's almost double the staff time to manage something below 100, and you're getting paid half as much on a management fee for twice the much work.
Right.
And there's just, you can't squeeze anything out of that rock. There's just, you talk to the owner and the tenant. I mean, you charge late fees on a $500 rent. The late fees equal the rent after a while. They just walk out. They skip. And
right.
That's, and then.
Well, and I just find at that level, anyways, they skip a lot.
They skip a lot.
But in Section 8, they can't.
Right.
And if they get behind on their tenant portion, they can't move. So, and they can only move once a year at their lease renewal date.
Oh, really?
And if they're behind on that date, then they don't get a letter saying
they're good.
They're good. They have to wait a whole nother year to move.
Wow.
So I had one tenant and she was constantly behind. But her tenant portion was $50 a month.
Right.
So it wasn't a huge deal. And so I would inevitably let her get behind a bunch, and then she'd get really behind, and I'd go, okay, we got to get this thing caught up a little bit, and she'd come up with it. But she ended up staying there, my God, 10, 12 years.
Really? Mm-hmm. Paid for the house probably.
Yeah, considering I think I paid $13,000 for that one.
Nice. So what are you doing now? What's on the forefront? You got 2018's winding down, 2019's about to kick.
So I'm still, 2019's about to kick. I'm still, I've got 2 enormous portfolios of mortgage notes that I'm working through this week. And
really?
Yeah.
So what do you do?
I'm another exit strategy.
Okay.
That's all I am for investors out there. I teach investors right now on how to buy and get long-term cash flow with no debt.
Okay.
And that's what I preach. Especially we are going to go into a downturn.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. So when we hit that, people are like, oh, we'll have inflation, so it's good to have debt borrowed from other people. No, it's not.
Yeah.
You want to be as debt-free as possible when we go into that, because, that's just one less stress that you have. I had a ton of debt going into the last one, and it was stressful at times.
Yeah. It can, and debt is a funny thing, right? It's a double-edged sword.
Right.
It can be good and it can be bad.
You have to have it.
In the same day.
In the same day. Yeah, you have to have it.
Yeah.
Right? You have to borrow money to get this stuff done. But if you don't have the cash flow to cover it, it can be extremely stressful. However, what I tell people is, it's like when you go in and buy a property, right? And you're doing rentals, right? And your goal is to get as many rentals as you can. Buy 5, keep 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
no, true.
sell 4 off, take the profit from it and pay it off so it's cash free. The same thing goes with notes. You're going to, if you're doing all these owner finance properties, all right, so you've got 5 owner finance mortgage notes that you've created. You've bought the house, rehabbed it, sell 4, keep 1.
So do you help investors in this arena? Is that correct? Or?
I do. And I get calls all the time. Hey, can you help me set up this deal?
Do you do like a mentoring program, or do you
I don't.
You're just someone who's out there grinding, and you're just they ask you and you help them?
So I help all the time because I would love to create an army of owner finance investors.
Sure.
Because the more people that I have out there creating notes, the more I have to buy.
Gotcha.
And that's
so you want to buy it from the investor.
Yeah, and I pay more than anybody else. What? So I'm paying in the 90s for this stuff mostly.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I could have used you a couple of years ago.
I hear that a lot. Yeah. I love hearing what people accept it. I'm like,
I don't really want to talk about it.
How can you sell a performing asset for that?
Well, yeah. So anyways, that's another conversation. But so if somebody wants to get a hold of you and they want to talk about this, what are some things that, should they have some prerequisites before they call you, or what, obviously a deal would be
Well,
a good idea.
deal would be good. You
Right.
know, I've got people who are like, I just want to get started doing this, you know, and they don't even have a house. They don't have a way to get a house. I'm just like, okay, first you got to go find these things.
Right.
You know, and there's a lot of ways to do it. I've had investors that I have owner financed properties to,
Really?
and then they have gone and wrapped it.
I was just going to ask you if you ever deal with people doing a wrap.
I buy wraps all the time. In fact, I tell people sell all your wraps.
Really?
Yeah, because your wraps are confusing to people, right? If you can't get financing on them or anything like that. But what I do is I will buy that, pay off all underlying debt. I get brand new title policy on everything, so everything's clean paper. And
Okay.
then I sell it to larger banks and hedge funds. And
Is there a seasoning with that?
the minimum I can look at is 3 on-time payments. 6 is better. I've got 1 or 2 people who will buy with 3 on-time payments.
Really?
Yeah, one or two banks.
Interesting. So what is your model? Like how long do you keep it to sell it, or do you have a hidden secret, or do you have a
I'm basically arbitrage.
I don't even know what that word means. I got to look that up.
I am buying and selling same day.
Same day.
Yeah. And it gets a little hairy and a little stressful because there have been times a year ago I had one that was just, it was a nightmare of a deal. One end buyer, I think there were 43, 44 notes in the thing from 12 different sellers.
No kidding.
And it was just orchestrating all the pieces because I've got a legal secretary who reviews documents for me. I've got a couple of virtual assistants who put spreadsheets together for me. We have to verify all of the principal and interest. We have to look at every detail in the note because owner finance paper tends to be a bit ugly. There's typos everywhere. We've got to correct all that.
Because it's a legal document?
Oh, God, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So do you think do people do that instead of buy and hold? It's a means to buy and hold?
So it's just a different thing. As you said, there were properties that you didn't want to rent because you can get a higher caliber of occupant
Sure.
if you own or finance it. Because we're talking about people who've managed to save $10,000, $15,000, $20,000
Right.
for a down payment.
Yeah.
You know, and they've taken years to save that up.
Yeah, exactly. That's hard-earned money. It's not easy to come by.
No, and you know, as there's a bunch of real estate investors out there going, how's it even possible that they've done this? You know, and they go buy their first house. So they really do care about that house. I drive by some of these owner finance notes I've had, and they've changed the paint color, and
Really?
there's flowers out, and they might have put like a porch addition on the front. I mean, they really show pride of ownership.
No kidding. Do you try to stay under a certain price point with these?
I do. I tell everybody stay under 200, 150, 200 is your max after repair value.
And do you try to stay above a number, like obviously above 30? But is there
Actually, you can owner finance anything.
Right. No, I get that.
For me, when I'm buying these things, the cost for me to buy a note is pretty much fixed.
Right.
So on a $100,000 note is basically where I do most of my calculations. We get below 50,000 on these low balance things, I actually start losing money.
Really?
If I've paid 90 cents on the dollar for a $50,000 note and ended up losing money on it because of how my closing costs were.
Well, and I'm assuming that when you're paying a higher value, like 90 cents on the dollar, you have to keep the velocity of that money moving. That's why you've got to turn it quickly.
Absolutely. I do. I'm constantly turning it.
Essentially, that's kind of like your job.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's a job. So what is that a strategy towards?
This one?
Yeah.
So my long-term goals, we're just talking about that. So I'm buying and selling as many notes as I can. Mm-hmm. I'm keeping notes now.
Oh, okay.
So my 3 to 5 year plan is that, they'll go on the warehouse line. I will, right now I'm paying prime +1. So.
Gotcha.
But, I have a lot of experience.
You know what you're doing.
2017 I did $15.8 million.
Really? Look at you.
In mortgage notes. Yeah.
No
so
kidding.
I've got a proven track record of what I'm doing.
Right.
And I've got my buyers list that I keep very close to the vest.
Nice.
Don't share that.
Yeah.
And so my goal is, to have around 10 million in notes that I'm keeping.
Very cool.
But that's going to take several years. So
yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Wow. So we're almost out of time. If somebody wants to talk to you and they want to learn from you, can you give some information, some contact details?
Sure. Send me an email at Kristin, Kristin. Kristin has 2 eyes. Always remember that.
2 eyes.
2 eyes. Kristin
Wow.
has 2 eyes. I know. I have
like
to come
that.
up with like little ways for people to remember how to spell my name. And at CapricornMortgageInvestments.com.
There we go. And you're on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook. You can find me all over there. You can send me private messages. I will get those, even
Nice.
if we're not friends.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah, and it's great. And again, this goes back to hanging out with like-minded people, understanding what's going on in the industry, and really, really focusing on what it is that you want your goal to be. And this is just a strategy. Like many other people that we talk to, that we have on the show, these are all great, great strategies. For us, if you want to come to our event tomorrow night, Owner Education Series, understand it, find it, fund it. So we're going to be talking about the mindset of the successful investor, who you have to become mentally, and how you come up with the right strategy to get your goals. Then we're going to be talking, we're going to have Daryl Dyke again. He's going to be talking about how you actually fund these deals. And we're going to have Matt Trenchard and Sam Craven there talking from Senna House Buyers about how you actually find these types of deals, how you identify them, how you run the numbers on them. We're actually going to have Empire Realty is going to be there. We have deals. We actually have real estate deals that we manage with tenants in them that they're going to be
Very nice.
promoting. We're going to have a lot of people there. It's a good Vinyl Draft's going to be there. They're going to be live. We're going to have Camp Hope. I'm not sure but we do a lot of work with Camp Hope. It's a veteran support for veterans with PTSD.
Very good.
So they are there. We're a very proud supporter of them. They're going to be there. It's a good event. We like to have a lot of investors there. We like to talk about things. And, again, this is one of the things, having you on the show, this is a facet of real estate that people don't even understand.
People don't, very few people know anything about it.
Yeah. They don't know about it. They don't understand it. And it's one of those things that it's a great way. It's another vehicle.
And it's necessary.
It's necessary.
And
true.
really, you can pick up owner finance deals from other investors and turn them into rentals.
Absolutely.
Just what you were saying at the beginning of the show.
Like me. We had a failing business model. Somebody picked, we turned some of them into success because we owner financed them. Others, we just basically, we sold off. I don't know what they did with them. I know some guys that bought them, they have a very successful business model.
Yeah.
And so, again, don't look at every deal as a bad deal.
Well, you've got some people who want that house and they're like, well, I live, like 2 blocks away.
Absolutely.
I would love to buy this and rent it out.
Yep.
And they're the perfect person to do that.
Yeah.
So, and it might not be for you for whatever you're doing.
For whatever reason, yeah. If you asked me, hey, Steve, do you want to start buying notes? I would say, that's a great strategy, but I don't have the time commitment to do that, right?
Exactly.
So it's just one of those things. It's not that it's bad. It's just, is it good for me at this time?
Well, and you've got to find that one thing that you're good in.
Pick a lane.
Pick a lane.
Yep.
The people who try to do 10 different things,
They suck at all of them.
they really do.
They suck at all of them.
So I hire professionals to do basically everything.
Absolutely.
And I do what I'm good at.
You got to pick a lane. And again, Kristin, thank you so much for being here on the show.
Thanks
I
for having
really
me.
appreciate it. If somebody wants to get a hold of her 2 eyes and Kristin, you can go on Facebook. You can find her there. Capricorn
Mortgage Investments.
Mortgage Investments. And again, you can go look us up, Empire Industries LLC or selfmanagemyproperty.com. I want to thank everyone for being on the show, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
This has been the